Today we are going to discuss about reproduction in plants. We have two main types of reproduction in plants. We have sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So we are going to start with the asexual reproduction in plants. The asexual reproduction in plants can occur mainly by two means. It can be by natural vegetative propagation, or it can be by the means of artificial vegetative propagation. In the natural vegetative propagation, there is no human interference. In artificial vegetative propagation, it involves some activities of the human for this process to be done. So let's start with the natural vegetative propagation. This occurs naturally in plants without any human interference. So we have various types of natural vegetative propagation. We have rhizome, which is an underground horizontal stem that produce new shoots and roots. Example we have here is the one we have in ginger, in which it has to grow horizontal like this from here. Horizontal, not vertical, vertical straight, horizontal this way. And we have tuber, which is a swelling underground stem containing store food and buds. The bud is an immature shoot that grows into a new plant. So example we have here is Irish potato, yam, etc. And we have bulb. Bulb is a short underground stem surrounded by fleshy leaves storing food, as we have in onion. And we have combs, which are swelling upright. That means it is standing vertically upward, upright underground stem with buds. I said these what they are buds, they are immature shoots that has to later develop into new plants. Example we have here is cocoa yam. And we have the suckers. The suckers is a new shoot arising from the base of the stem or the root. At the base of the stem or the root, or in between the stem and the root, is where the new shoot will develop, as we have in banana, we have in plantain, and we have the runners, and we have the stolon. The runners, they are growing above the ground and they are creeping along the soil surface. The stolon, some part of it will be under the ground and some part of it will be above, or in some cases, all of it will just be below the soil. But what happens, they may not go right down, they may be just closer to the surface of the soil, but they are under it. And they form roots at the nodes. We have examples here. We have sweet potato, we have strawberry. Strawberry is a typical example of a runner. They are growing or they are creeping above the soil surface. While sweet potato, some part of it is under the ground and some part of it is above the ground creeping. And we have leaves. In some plants, the leaf can develop buds, which are immature shoots, which has to later develop into new plants. Example of this one we have is in bryophyllum. And we have artificial vegetative propagation, which we are going to discuss now. We have discussed about the natural vegetative propagation. Now let's discuss about the artificial vegetative propagation. We have the first one, the cutting, in which you have to take the plant like we do in cassava, you divide it into many pieces and you plant each of these pieces, which will give rise to a new plant. And we have budding. In budding, what we do, you remove part of a plant, and that part which you are going to remove is what we call the bud. You will come and prepare a T shape like we have here, and you insert it into it. Now, when you insert it into it, what will happen? This bud which you have inserted into the main plant, what will happen? It will grow together with it. They will combine. It will become a uniform plant. They will join together to form one. And the bud will grow, bears fruit as the case may be, and the main plant also will continue to bear its own fruit. So in grafting, what you do, you cut a plant from the stem like we have here, or you cut it in an indented form or slightly bent like this form here, and you come with it and insert it into another plant like we have here in this diagram here. This is where you have to come and insert it into it. When you insert it into it, as we have in this diagram, you tie it so that it can become firm and stand on its own. The one that you are coming with it, this one above, is what we call the scum, SCIOM. The one that is below having the root is what we call the stalk. So what will happen? The scum will give rise to the shoot, while the stalk, the one that is below, will give rise to the root. Now let's talk about the sexual reproduction in plants. Plants also, they are producing gametes. They are producing the male gametes and they are producing the female gametes. The male gamete in plants, it is called pollen grain that is found in the anther. The female gamete is called ovule, OVULE. In animals, it is called ovum, OVUM. So you have to know the difference in spelling. The reproductive organ of a plant is called flower. Now, this flower is having many parts, as we have here on this slide. It has the anther and it has the filament. It is the filament that holds the anther. The anther contains the pollen grain, that is the male gamete. The anther and the filament together, they are called stamen. And a plant having only the stamen, that means having only the male part, it is called staminate flower. And we have here on the right side, we have the stigma, we have the ovary, we have the style, we have the ovary. The stigma, style, and the ovary, collectively they are called the pistil, and they form the female reproductive part of the flower. And a flower having only the female part is called a pistillate flower. Those parts which are involved in the process of reproduction, they are called the essential parts. That means the anther, the filament, the stigma, the style, and the ovary. Collectively, they are called the essential part of a flower. And we have the other part like the petal, the sepal, the receptacle, which are not involved into any reproduction directly. They are referred to as non-essential parts. Now let's come back to talk about the various parts of the flower, with their function. What are their role that they are playing? Now we have the receptacle here at the bottom that holds the ovary. And below the receptacle, we have this part that connects the flower to the stem is called the pedicel, but it is not written in this diagram. But just know the part that connects the flower to the stem is called the pedicel. And we have the ovule, that is the female gamete. It is found in the ovary. And we have the sepal, the one that is below. So this sepal, it does two things, which I'm going to talk about. One, it protects the flower in the bud stage when it is young. And two, it is green in color and therefore it performs photosynthesis. And we have the petal. The petal, it is brightly colored to attract pollinators. And we have the anther that contains or holds the pollen grain. And we have the stigma that receives the pollen grain that is being produced by the anther. And we have the style. The style is a tube connecting the stigma to the ovary. The pollen tube is being developed in the style. That's why we say the style, it connects the stigma to the ovary. And we have the ovary, the one that contains the ovum, the female reproductive gamete in plants. So now let's talk about pollination, which is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of a flower. That is the definition of pollination. We have two types of pollination. We have self-pollination, and which we have it in this first diagram here, which I'm going to label it as A. So in here, the pollen grain will transfer from the anther to the stigma of the same flower on the same plant. And in cross-pollination, grain will transfer from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of different plants, not the same plant, as we said, cross-pollination, but it has to be of the same species. For example, the pollen grain from a mango will just pollinate another mango species, not from mango to orange or from orange to mango. It has to be of the same species, mango to mango, orange to orange. Agents, that means things that are helping in the process of pollination. For example, we have players, they are having agents. What the agents will do, they will help the player to find a team. It's the same thing that these agents of pollination they are doing here. So we have different agents of pollination. We have wind, we have insects, we have water, and we have animals that are helping in the process of pollination. So we are going to talk about the characteristics of insect pollinated flowers, which we call the entomophilous flower. And we are also going to talk about the characteristics of wind pollinated flowers, which are called the anemophilous flower. But we are going to use this slide to explain both the insect and the wind pollinated flowers, how they look like. The insect pollinated flowers, they secrete what we call nectar. It is this nectar that the insect will come to feed on it. On the process of feeding, it will collect some pollen grain on its body. In fact, in bees, they have a pollen basket to collect the pollen grain. So what will happen after they have sucked the nectar from the plant, they may go to another plant On that process, they can sit on various parts like the stigma. If they sit on the stigma, the pollen grain that they have on their body, some of it will drop on top of the stigma. As we say, pollination is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of a flower. So that is how instant pollination is being done in a flower. But in the case of wind pollinated flowers, they do not produce nectar. They don't have it. And the insect pollinated flowers, they have sweet scent or sweet smell. In the wind pollinated flowers, they are not scented. They don't have any sweet smell. And the wind pollinated flowers, they have large and conspicuous petals. In the insect pollinated flowers, they have small and inconspicuous petal. That means you cannot see the petal from a distance. You have to be closer. And they often have brightly colored petal. The petal they have can be blue, can be red, can be pink, or it can even be white in color. In the case of wind pollinated flower, they are not having brightly colored petal, but they have a dull color petal. And insect pollinated flowers, they also produce few but sticky pollen grains. In the wind pollinated flowers, they produce many and smooth pollen grain. So in the insect pollinated flowers, they are not producing many, but the few that they are producing, they are what? Sticky. In the wind pollinated flowers, they are producing many because these things are going to be blown away by wind and they have to be in the air. So it is possible they cannot meet a stigma in which they can land on it for this pollination to be completed. So what they have to do, they will produce a lot to increase their chance. Insect pollinated flowers, they know this insect has to move from one flower to another and the process is short compared with the wind pollinated flowers that the pollen grain just have to be in the air moving. And in here, the stigma is usually inside the flower as we have it in the insect pollinated flowers because this insect has to come and the nectar is right inside. So what will happen? The stigma is inside and that stigma is on the part where they have to use to go down and suck in the nectar. So on the process of going down to suck in the nectar, they come along with this stigma. So if they have the pollen grain, what will happen? They will drop it on top of the stigma before they suck the nectar. But in the wind pollinated flower, the stigma is outside hanging for any pollen grain that is passing in the air so that they can collect it. It is not inside, it is what? Outside. So any pollen grain passing, they may be able to collect it. If it is inside, it will be difficult for them to collect the pollen grain. That's why in the wind pollinated flower, the stigma is usually outside hanging to collect any pollen grain passing by it. You have to know about fertilization in plant. Everything has to be explained to you. So in fertilization, the first thing that has to happen first is what? Pollination. That pollen grain has to move from the anther and it has to come and land on the stigma. So when the pollen grain lands on the stigma, when it is on the stigma, what will happen? It will absorb nutrient and moisture from the stigma. And what will happen? It will germinate and enter into the style. Now, this style that we have here, which connect the stigma to the ovary here, we develop into what we call the pollen tube. Now, the pollen grain is having two nucleus. One, we have the pollen tube nucleus, that is all the time at the front, creating that pollen tube. And we have the one at the back called generative nucleus that has to divide into two sperm nuclei. Mind you, this pollen tube is temporal, but the style is permanent. You can just compare it. We have the rod and we have the vehicle. Now the rod is the style. The pollen tube is the vehicle that has to transport the pollen grain to the ovary. As the generative nucleus and the pollen tube nucleus are traveling through the pollen tube, very close to the opening of the ovary, we call micropyle, the generative nucleus will divide into two sperm cells. The generative nucleus will divide into two sperm cells. And the pollen tube nucleus, very close to the opening of the ovary, which I called micropyle, the pollen tube nucleus will disintegrate, will move away. It's just like I have the pollen tube nucleus in front and I have the generative nucleus at the back. I said this generative nucleus will divide into two sperm cells, and this pollen tube nucleus, as I said, it is the one that has to create that passageway. So very close to the micropyle, that means the opening into the ovary. If this one doesn't move, this one will not have a passage into that ovary. Now what will happen? The pollen tube nucleus will disintegrate, will move away, and this one will have a passage to enter into the ovary. Now what will happen? We said we have two sperm cells. As we said, the generative nucleus will divide into two sperm cells. So one of these sperm cells, one of it will travel and fuse with the egg in order to form the zygote. That is the first fertilization. The other sperm cell will travel and fuse with the polar nuclei, having two nucleus. In that case, it will form the endosperm. Now the zygote, since the sperm cell is having one set of chromosome and the egg is having one set of chromosome, the zygote is diploid. Two. Di means two. That means the zygote is having two sets of chromosome. And in here we have one sperm cell having one set of chromosome, and we have two polar nucleus. That's why we call it polar nuclei. Nuclei is the plural form of a nucleus. And the polar nuclei is having two sets of chromosome. So the two sets of chromosome in the polar nuclei and the one set of chromosome in the sperm cell, when they combine together, they give us three sets of chromosome. That's why the endosperm is called triploid cell. But the zygote is what? Diploid, because we just have one set of chromosome in the egg and one set of chromosome in the sperm cell. When this one and the other one combine, they give us two. So that's why we say the zygote is diploid in nature, but the endosperm is triploid in nature because it has three sets of chromosome. Now, after this process has done, after fertilization, what will happen? The ovules will develop into seed, while the ovary will develop into fruit. And mind you, it is the fruit that surrounds the seed. So next we have is placentation. If you have been asked to define placentation, it's simply the arrangement of the ovules within the ovary. The arrangement of the ovules within the ovary is called placentation. We have different types of placentation. We have the marginal placentation, we have the axial placentation, we have parental placentation, we have the free central placentation, and we have the basal or basal placentation. So let's start with the marginal placentation. In this case, the ovules, this one that we have here, these seeds, are arranged along the margin of the ovary. As we can see it here, they are being arranged along the margin of this ovary. Example we have here is in pea, we have it also in beans, etc. Now we have the axial placentation. In here we have the central axis, this one at the center. Now this central axis, it is having septa dividing this one into locus. Now we have three locus here. We have one, we have two here, and we have three here. So in axial placentation, you can see the central axis, you can see this septa dividing this ovary into locus. Now on this central axis here, you can see the ovals that are being attached to it. Look at the ovals here. This is another one. This is another one. So we have six that are being attached to this central axis. It doesn't mean it has to be all the time six. It can be more than that. It doesn't mean it has to be three locus. Even if you have two locus, it is part of axial placentation. Example of axial placentation, we have it in citrus fruit like oranges, grapes, lemon, etc. And we have parental placentation. In here, the ovals are arranged on the wall of the ovary, like we have here. On this wall here, we have the ovals that are being attached to it, and it just have one local. In free central placentation, similar to axial placentation, but in free central placentation, there is no septa dividing this ovary. So in this case, we just have the central axis, and on this central axis, we have the ovals that are being attached to it. So in this case, it just have one local, like this one here. No septa dividing it into locals. We just have one. So in free central placentation, we have one local, and you can see the central axis on which the ovals are being attached to it. Sorry, I didn't give the example of parental placentation. We have it in cucumber, we have it in pawpaw. In free central placentation, which is not common, example we have is the primrose. In primrose, when you open it, you can see the central axis, and on that central axis, the ovals are being attached to it. And we have the basal placentation, just like the name indicates, basal. So in this case, the oval, this white structure you are seeing here, is attached at the base of the ovary. Example we have here is in sunflower. So we have fruit and seed that we have to discuss about it now. We are going to discuss about the various types of fruit that we have. But first, let's try to define what is a fruit and what is a seed. A fruit is a matured ovary. As we say, at the end of fertilization, the ovary will develop into fruit, and the oval will develop into seed. So that's why we have it on this slide that a fruit is a matured ovary, while a seed is a matured ovum. And this fruit is stores the seed, as it is the fruit that surrounds the seed. And the fruit is having two scars. Scars is being formed when you remove a part from something. Like when we have a wound, later that wound may have a mark, That mark is what we call scar. So in fruit, we have two scar. One that is being formed when you remove the style from it, because that style is connected to the ovary, and the other one is when you remove the receptacle, because that receptacle is also connected to the ovary. In the case of the seed, just like we said, the fruit stores the seed. So in the seed, we can say the seed is found within the fruit, and the seed is having only one scar. But the fruit is having how many scars? It has two scars. Now let's talk about the types of fruit. We have simple fruit, aggregate fruit, and we have multiple fruit. These simple fruits, they are made from single ovary and a single flower. In aggregate fruit, they are made from many ovaries but single flower. In multiple fruit, they are made from multiple ovary and multiple flowers. Now let's try to describe the diagram of a fruit. So the time we may talk about the various subtype, the types of fruit under the single fruit, under the aggregate, under the multiple, we can understand it. So that's why we are going to talk about the diagram of the fruit before we go in details. Now, in the fruit, we have what we call the pericarp. The wall of the fruit is called the pericarp. It is divided into three. We have the part that is outside, as exo means outside. The cap is something surrounding it, like the skin. So the part outside is called exocap. As I said, exo means outside. And the part that is right inside is called endocap, as endo means inside. And we have the one in between the one that is outside and the one that is inside. The meso means in between. So we have the mesocap in between the exocap and the endocap. And right inside we have the seed. As we say, the fruit, it surrounds the seed. And we have this part that has to connect the fruit to the stem. It is called the pedicel. Now, in this single fruit, we have what we call fleshy fruit and we have dry fruit. The fleshy fruit is also called succulent fruit. Now in here, the pericarp, that means the endocap, the mesocap, and the exocap, they are soft and sometimes they are edible. So we have three types of succulent or fleshy fruits. One we have is the drupe. The drupe, by description, it is having a single seed, just one seed, and it has hard endocap. Now, in the pericarp, you have the exocap, mesocap, and the endocap. The epicap, mesocap, they are soft. In some cases, they are fibrous in nature, the mesocap, like we have in coconut. But the endocap of them, all of it, it is what? Hard. So example we have is in mango, we have the avocado, and we have the coconut. The coconut is not a nut. Coconut is a drupe because it just have one seed and it has a hard endocap. That's why we don't put it under the nut. When we talk about the description of the nut, you will know that this coconut is not a nut. And next we have is a berry. The berries, they are having multiple seeds, many seeds in it. And for them, the entire pericarp, the epicap, mesocap, and the endocap, they are soft. So the example here are tomato, banana, pawpaw, etc. They are all berries. The third one we have here is pome, Pome. Half part of it is derived from the ovary, and half part of it is derived from the accessory tissue, like the receptor. Discussed about dry fruit under the simple fruit. The dry fruit, as their name indicates, they have dry pericarp. That means the pericarp is not having water in them like we have in the succulent or the fleshy fruits. And in this case, the pericarp is not soft. The pericarp is often hard. So we have two types of dry fruit. We have dry dehiscent fruit that they have to split in order to release the seed, and we have dry indehiscent fruit that they will not split in order to release their seed. So under the dehiscent means to split. So if we talk about dry dehiscent fruit, that means these fruits they split in order to release their seed. So we have various types of the dry dehiscent fruits. They can be follicle. The follicle they split along one suture, just along one line, like we have in kola nut. Mind you, this thing they will not come and ask you to define what is a follicle or what is a dehiscent fruit or what is aggregate fruit. They will just come with many fruits. You identify it. Which type of fruit is it? Is it a drupe? Is it a berry? Is it a follicle? Is it a legume? Is it a capsule? Your own is to identify it. Legumes they split along two sutures. So along two ways, like we have here, they are splitting along two ways in order to release their seeds. So example we have here, it is found in beans and peas. And we have the capsule that is split in various ways in order to release the seeds. So example we have here, the common one is okra, that they can split along many means in order to release their seeds. And we have dry indehiscent. As we said, dehiscent means to split. So indehiscent means they do not split. So in here, they do not split in order to release their seed. Their seed will be intact. Example we have here is in acne. The acne, they just have one seed, and that seed they are having, it is free from the pericarp. That means the seed is not attached to the seed wall or the seed coat. That means the seed is not attached to the seed coat. It is free from the seed coat. The other type of dry indehiscent fruit that we have is cryopsis. In here, they also have a single seed, but that seed is being fused with the pericarp. That means the pericarp and the seed, they are fused together. It is not free. Example we have is in maize, and we have it in wheat, and we have samara, in which they are being described as the wing fruit. They are the only fruit that are having wing on it, which they can use for dispersal, like we have here. This is the fruit that we have here, and this is the wing which they can use for dispersal. And we have nut. Now listen, I said coconut is not a nut. The nut they are having hard pericarp. That means everything about the pericarp, it is what hard. not like in the case of coconut, in which the epicarp is soft and in which the mesocarp is fibrous in nature. So it doesn't fit into this description we have here for nut. So that's why coconut is not a nut. It fits into the drupe description in which they have a stony or hard endocarp. And the nut they are having single seed. Example we have here is the cashew nut. We have aggregate fruit. So after simple fruit, we say we have aggregate fruit and we have multiple fruit. Now we have done everything about the simple fruit. Now we have to discuss about the aggregate fruit. And the aggregate fruit, as I said, they are developing from one flower with many carpels. In the simple fruit, as I said, they develop from one flower with one carpel. But in here, one flower with many carpels. That is for aggregate. But in multiple fruit, they develop from multiple flowers with multiple carpels. So everything about the multiple is what? Multiple. Multiple flowers, multiple carpels. Now back to the aggregate fruit. Each of these carpel will form a small fruit. Example we have is raspberry, strawberry. These berries that we have here, they may come with it, and in some case, they may even ask you to name them which type of fruit are they having. You may think they are berry because their spelling is ending in berry, but raspberry, strawberry, they are what? Aggregate fruit. And we have multiple fruit. As I said, they are coming from multiple flowers with multiple carpels, each producing a fruit that fuses into one, like we have in pineapple. Each of those things you see, which we call the eye, each of them, they are flowers. And those flowers, they are being fused together. They have that stick in which all of them are being fused on it. And the last type of fruit is the accessory fruit, which we don't discuss it most often, but I'm just going to talk about it because most of these fruit that we have here, they are also part of POME, POME, which we discuss under fleshy fruits when we are talking about simple fruits. So in here, part of the fruit is developing from the ovary, and part of it is developing from other parts other than the ovary. It can be receptacle, it can be any other part as long as the whole fruit is not coming from the ovary. It can come from the receptacle, it can come from any other part that is closer to the ovary. So example we have here is in apple, half part of it is coming from the ovary, half part of it is coming from the receptacle. Now let's talk about seed dispersal, how seed will move from one place to another. As we have talked about fruit, now let's discuss about seed. As we say, seed is a matured ovule. Now let's talk about dispersal of seed. Let's start with the one at the bottom. We have wind disperser. And the wind disperser, just as the name indicates, wind. In this case, it is the wind that has to move the seed from one place to another. And in wind disperser, you have to give the characteristics of the seed, which can make the seed to be dispersed by wind. So now the seed that has to be dispersed by wind, it has to be one, the seed has to be light weighted. It cannot be heavy like a stone. They cannot be blown away by the wind. So one, it has to be light weighted. Then some seed, they develop wind, like we have it in Samara. They develop that wing so that they will use that wing to fly in the air. Next is the expulsion. The expulsion is occurring mainly in the dry dehiscent fruit, as they have to explode in order to release their seed. They have this line of weakness that they will split open to release their seed. So for a seed to be dispersed by expulsion, they need to have a line of weakness through which this seed can split in order to release their seed. Because they will ask you, what are the adaptations that make this seed to be dispersed by either wind, by expulsion, or by animals, or by water? So by wind, as we said, one, they are light-weighted. Then two, some of them develop wind. And expulsion, they're supposed to have a line of weakness, or they're supposed to have a suture through which they can open to release their seeds. And we have dispersal by means of animals. Now in here, the seed has to be edible. So for a fruit or seed to be dispersed by animals, one, they're supposed to be edible. Two, they're supposed to withstand the digestive tract, not to be digested in the process. Now the last one here we have here in this diagram, the water. Now for a seed or a fruit to be dispersed in water, one, it's supposed to have air spaces to make the fruit light. So one adaptation, it has air spaces to reduce its weight. Then two, it's supposed to be impermeable to water, or it's supposed to be waterproof. It doesn't have to allow water to enter into it, because if water enters into it, it will add to its weight and it will sink, which will make dispersal by water very difficult. So the last one we have here, which is gravity. So the gravity will act on the fruit, like we have an apple, it will be hanging, gravity will act on it, and at the end of the day, the receptacle will move away from the stem and the apple will fall on the ground. So this fruit that they have to undergo this gravity, or they have to undergo gravitational means, one, they are heavier because they depend on their weight. That weight will pull on the receptacle. At the end of the day, the receptacle will detach from the stem and the fruit will fall under it. Germination is the process by which a seed grows into a seedling. We have two types of germination. We have epigear germination. Epi means on top. So in this case, the cotyledon will grow above the soil. And the hypogear, hypo means below. So in this case, the cotyledon will remain below the soil. So we have conditions necessary for germination. Mind you, the soil is not a condition necessary for germination. Conditions necessary for germination are water. How is this water necessary for germination? Now, for a seed to germinate, the seed coat is hard. When the seed coat absorbs water, it softens it so that the root or the shoots can emerge from it. And also that water will help to dissolve nutrients so that the enzymes can make use of it. Without water dissolving the nutrient, the enzymes cannot make use of it. It's just like what we have in the case of plants. The plants will absorb nutrients only when they are being dissolved in water. That's why you can see a plant standing here on the same place where we have that nutrient. During the dry season, that plant will not thrive well because there is no water to dissolve the nutrient, so the plant will take it up. But during the rainy season, when we have a lot of water in there, it can dissolve the nutrient, so the plant can take it up. And oxygen, that seed, it is living. So in that case, since that seed it is living and we have a store food in the seed, the oxygen will oxidize the food to give energy for the process of germination to occur. And next we have is temperature as a condition for germination. Certain seeds they have certain range of temperature in which they can germinate. Above it or below it, they cannot germinate. And in that case, they have to experience a period we call dormancy period, the time the seed will take to germinate. The dormancy period can be long, can be short, depending on these conditions, whether they are present or not. And the last one here is what? Viable seed. You cannot go and plant a dead seed, yes, you expect it to germinate. Just like humans, in natural form, we cannot rise from the dead. And one thing that is not part of this slide, which I have to tell you, is about the process of germination. How does it occur? I remember it is a past question, so I have to tell you. Now, the first thing that the seed will do, will absorb water. When it absorbs water, the water will soften the seed coat. So the seed absorb water to soften the seed coat and dissolve the nutrients so the enzymes can act on it. The next thing is that the oxygen will oxidize the food to give energy for the process of germination. What will happen next? The radicle and the plumule will emerge outside. The radicle will develop into root, while the plumule will develop into shoot. So that is how the process of germination is occurring.